Hello and a very warm welcome to Game On. I'm Meha Bhardwaj-Alter, and in today's episode, we look back at India's absolute demolition of the West Indies in the first test in Dominica and also talk about the takeaways from that game. We also tell you why Usman Khwaja will not take his family to England and Yuzvendra Chahal is angry with RCB. If you want to know why, stay tuned. Let me introduce our panelists to you on the show. Jamie Alter joins us, who, unlike many others, is really disappointed in the West Indies because if there's one person who said that West Indies, if they fight to their potential, could draw the series was Jamie. And like I said, before the series started, Jamie, this was an unpopular opinion. But right now, in the way West Indies are playing, I would have taken that any day. I mean, we want this series to be exciting, and it is far from it. Kushan Sarkar also joins us. He's been busy. He's taken the time out to be there on the show. And I can also tell you one thing, guys, that if there's one person who knows interesting stories about Yashasvi Jaiswal, it is Kushan Sarkar. So we will get both our panelists to talk to us. But before that, let's set this up for you. And I'm going to talk about the two players who have played starring roles in the first test, and they couldn't be more different than each other in terms of their careers and their age. I am talking about Yashasvi Jaiswal. I'm talking about Ravichandran Ashwin. So one is still trying to find his place in the team on away tours, even as some label him as one of the greatest to play the game. He's 36 years old. Some would even argue that he is the greatest match winner after Anil Kumble, one of the best all-rounders of the game. The other is a 21-year-old. You can see him on your screens, whose artist journey from a humble background to instant fame in the IPL is a perfect script film producers will be lining up for. What's even more inspirational is this young man made a brilliant 171 on his international debut. So while the young Yashasvi Jaiswal soaks in the success of his fairy tale debut, veteran R. Ashwin has shown how important he is to this team setup as he broke so many records in his stunning performances of 12 wickets for 131 in the first test. So, you know, this word transition is being used often, but I would think in the way these two have played in the first test, that it is a big step in that process. Now, can India go from strength to strength from here on? That's, of course, a question that we'll see. And also, we have to judge this by the kind of opposition and the conditions that India had in the West Indies. Like I was just telling Jamie, we would have wanted West Indies to play better. The conditions also, the wicket itself, it was slow, it was difficult to bat on, and yet Yashasvi Jaiswal proved that he belongs on this stage of Test cricket. So let me get straight to our panelists then. Jamie, it wasn't the toughest when it came to conditions or opposition, but what stood out for me was the patience and hunger for runs Yashasvi had in how he batted.
Yes, good evening. Absolutely. See, yes, West Indies were poor. You can argue that, they were so poor that maybe they should take a break from Test cricket. That's how abject they were. But there were times when the West Indies fast bowlers, especially with the new ball on that first evening final session, they were bowling the right areas. It was not, we can say, a pitch naturally conducive to stroke play, which is why we saw even someone like Virat Kohli had to wait 80-odd balls, I believe, for his first boundary. Now, once that's gone out of the way, Yashasvi Jaiswal has shown, because it would have been very easy, had he failed or had he played a few rash shots, despite getting some good runs, it would have been very easy to say, oh, look, he's a product of the slam, bang, T20 age, he's good for the IPL. I personally, and I'm just speaking entirely about myself here, very glad to see that he was happy, content, almost even thriving to just play that traditional waiting game, something which Chiteshwar Pujara was doing till not too long ago, right? 16 balls, we've all discussed, he took 16 balls to get off the mark, but it was not just that. To bat for 6 odd sessions, 370 plus deliveries from a player who's made his name by playing a slightly more aggressive name. game. Yes, there have been times, especially playing for Mumbai, when he's been told to bat that Kadus way, and he's gone out and played that, very well documented. But it could have been, and it would not have been entirely amiss had he scored 100 off 135 balls, just like a certain Prithvi Shaw did not too long ago. So, personally speaking, keeping in mind the 12 to 15 years, I believe Yashasvi Jaiswal, if form and fitness stay by his side. From that aspect, very, very glad to see that someone who's grown up in this aggressive era could play in innings like that. So hats off. Of course, tougher challenges are not too far down the road, namely in South Africa, a little under 6 months from now. But I believe, take nothing away from what he's achieved, from the opposition. Do not say, "Arey yaar, West Indies hai, ye sab." Yes, they were poor. But again, he didn't have to play this way. He chose to play this way, I believe, to underline what we've all been saying, that this is a guy who's made for Test cricket.
Kushan, what is so special about Yashasvi Jaiswal? Jamie was talking about, the mental toughness, the patience that he saw, the Kadus attitude while you're in the middle on a pitch which is slow. Your shots, you've played drives that have gone to the fielders. After a point, you get frustrated, and he's all of 21. So you saw that patience. Is that his speciality? Because, that's one thing we all try to see, right? When Rohit Sharma made his debut, what was his speciality? He had that extra bit of time to play his shots, right? So what is Yashasvi Jaiswal's specialty?
Yashasvi Jaiswal's speciality is the fact that he can change the game, change the gear according to the need of the situation. He doesn't have one gear, he has both gears. Yeah. In this kind of condition, on this track, stroke making was very difficult. Staying on the crease wasn't difficult. You won't get out, but scoring was difficult. He played 387 balls, Maya. So 387 balls is nearly 64.3 overs out of what India batted. I think close to 150 overs that India batted. 64.3 overs were consumed by Yashasvi himself. That speaks volumes that it's just not those 650 odd IPL runs. He can bat long hours. And batting long hours, you run. That runs in the veins of the Mumbai school of cricket. Rohit Sharma has had daddy hundreds and double hundreds in Ranji Trophy before he came into the scenario in the Indian team. He had a big double hundred against Bengal way back in 2006 at the Eden Gardens, and it was a regal innings that he batted, I think, for a day and a half. I happened to cover that match. That's why I was a witness to that innings, and that was before Rohit Sharma became the Rohit Sharma. So Mumbai school of batsmanship, they have that in them. He is from Bhadohi in UP, but he came there, and obviously, I always compare life and cricket together. I always find a slice of life in cricket. We all do, Maya, and that is there. The kind of hardship that he's gone through. Although I believe the Pani Puri story has been done to death, and there is a bit of an urban myth. He was once told by someone he knew that, "Can you stand for me?" And he stood there, and after that became a myth. Thanks to us, the media, because his childhood coach Jwala Singh, with whom he had stayed for years, had given interviews to my colleagues, and he has said that part is, I believe, a very small part, and even Yashasvi doesn't like that part to be highlighted, because that was a very small part. But the part that could be highlighted is how he has trained his mind. He was sent to England at the age of 14 and 15. He had been to England when he was 15, stayed there for a month or 2 months, played cricket over there so that he could learn the technique, he could toughen up. Jwala Singh made that arrangement. And then Zubin Bharucha, I spoke to recently, is one of the finest talent scouts. Rajasthan Royals is Zubin Bharucha, who himself was a Ranji player, first class player. He had played for a very strong Bombay team, and even though he had played around 18 or 20 first class matches on an average of 42, Zubin tells me that the guy doesn't know anything apart from cricket. He just wants to play the game. He was taken to Talegaon in Maharashtra, where RR has an academy, where he stayed alone and he would practice maybe one shot 300 times just to perfect it. They had employed baseball coaches, got the baseball mechanics just to improve his power game. They would change the weight of his bat, they would change the weight of the ball and make him play 100 or 200 lobs a day and give him a target that you have to hit the ball 100 meters just to increase his strength. Zubin was telling me that you shake hands with him. I don't think there is any Indian player, young Indian player, who will have so many blisters as Yashasvi would have. And Zubin has seen quite a few of them in the last 5-7 years being a part of Rajasthan Royals. So these are the things. Practice is same, Meha. Jamie would also tell you that practice never differs. Yes, T20 practice you have simulation, you play according to the situation, but a ball that needs to be hit, if a square cut needs to be hit in T20, the same ball needs to be hit in test matches, the same ball needs to be hit in ODI. The length of the ball doesn't change, the shot doesn't change. It's about your hard work, how much effort you put in the net, so that you find it very easy when you are playing the match. Simple. You study more, the question papers in the exam doesn't seem way too difficult. And that is the case with Yashasvi Jaiswal. And I hope that this, the hard work continues. Now he will play a lot more. So there will be no off season. So there will be little time to iron out his flaws. So he will be on the road and he will have to probably speak with the coaches and sort out little chinks that will be there in the armor. Obviously, that will be there. He's just 20, 21-year-old. Yeah. So it's a long way to go. The world is in front of him.
Absolutely. And I think, those are little things about Yashasvi Jaiswal that not many know. Like Kushan was saying, that Pani Puri story has been done to death. I've got to also ask you this, Jamie. Now, a lot of people are saying that, look, why do you need to go back and talk about where he's coming from and the hardships that he's had to face? Because you know what? Every player has his journey, right? But my point is, that's why that story is so much more inspirational. I mean, would you agree to that thought? I'm not saying that you go and sell that story as, oh, this Pani Puri seller has gone on to do big things. But I'm saying where he started, the amount of hard work that he has put in, and now where he finds himself. That in itself is a story which is aspirational, which is what young boys would see and say, you know what, I can do it too.
Absolutely. See, this whole issue of selling a story, I mean, look, I don't think we should get too much into it, because that's what the media does. That's what we do, right? Sometimes the player may push, or a player's support system may want to push a certain narrative in a certain way, but that's just one part. And you're absolutely right. That is an inspiration, right? Like I was just in Mumbai for 2 days. On the drive from the airport to home, the cab driver, he's in his 60s. He comes from Badohi, where Yashasvi Jaiswal comes from. So we're having a talk, and he said, "Sir, आपने इस लड़के के बारे में सुना है?" मैंने कहा, "सुना है, बिल्कुल, मैं इस line में हूँ." So we're talking now. This old man, Yadav ji, his name was. He was giving an example of the same environment where Yashasvi Jaiswal has come from. His reference point was 1984 when he was doing his inter-college. But he says this is a cricketing backwater, right? हम लोग की जो एक उम्मीद थी कि हम सिर्फ district तक खेले, but we came from a small family. I was pulled out of school. My father said this game. Now, this is something we've heard, I mean, countless times. Kushan knows, you know, the obstacles of a parent, right? But my point is the connection between someone who's now in his 60s, who for the last 38 years has been driving a Kali Pili in Bombay, where he comes from is the exact same place where Yashasvi Jaiswal has come from. Yashasvi Jaiswal is one person who's come from Bado. He's got the opportunity to come to Mumbai. Him selling Pani Puri or whatever it takes to sustain that thing is just, it's a very crucial part, but it's just one part. How someone wants to play it, how many times we play it off, I'm not even going to go into that, because that is an inextricable part of it. Let's look at what he's done. I find it far more fascinating sitting here hearing from Kushan about the calluses on Yashasvi Jaiswal's hand, on the fact that, hundreds of times one shot was played. I hope that someone like Prithvi Shaw, does he have a support system like that? Is there a Zubin Bharucha in Prithvi Shaw's life? Because to my mind, this is an extremely overrated player who now, due to circumstances, some in his own control, some out of his control, needs what Yashasvi Jaiswal has gotten, because we've seen what the boy can do, right? So let's hope that there are other Zubin Baruchas, there are other RR camps in Talegaon or whichever part of this vast and fascinating country, so that not just Jaiswal, but players who come before him, players who come after him can get the chance to do what he does. Then we can talk about who's selling pani puri, who's come from Dharavi, whose father was abusive. That's all. It's just it's a narrative that we the media like to play up, but it does not take away a single thing from what someone does. Shaw got 134 on test debut in very, very batting friendly conditions at Rajkot against a very poor West Indies attack. Yashasvi Jaiswal has got a debut 100 against a very poor West Indies attack. Let's hope that the two stories somewhere down the line can have a happy coexistence and Indian cricket can thrive.
Absolutely. I think people can disagree on how this story is, how is it polished and how it's put forward to the world. But all of us who've been watching cricket, who've been covering cricket, who are fans of cricket, had a big smile on our faces when he got to that century. I think that commonality is there amongst all of us because of how widely anticipated that debut was. Kushan, we've been talking about this team in transition, the importance of having an opener, a left-handed opener with Rohit Sharma. And in that sense, I think like the whole story has gone exactly to script. It couldn't have gone better than that, he batted well on his debut. We've now got this opener. I know I don't want to jinx it. I also don't want to be too excited about it. And yet, like I said, I think all of us were smiling because we just saw the future of Indian cricket in this young 21-year-old.
No, absolutely, Meha. Like, I always believe that if you are giving seniors a chance to score easy runs, why don't you give the juniors also that chance? I'm not saying that always you'll get an easy opposition first up. You might just have an Australia first up or an England first up. Saurabh Ganguly and Rahul Dravid had a debut at the Lords in bowling-friendly conditions against Dominic Cock, Peter Martin and Alan Mulally. Or Sachin Tendulkar played his very third test series against a very mighty Australian attack. It might not be the case, but in case of Yashasvi, like you have had his initiation, the initiation has been very smooth. He has played age group, he has played Ranji, he has played Dalit, he has played Irani, and he has played India A, and he has played a bit of India A, and now he has played Test cricket, and so he's getting ready. He might or he might not succeed against South Africa in South Africa, but he would eventually succeed against all big teams. He has that game. And the second part of it, I believe, the another part of the jigsaw puzzle is Shubman Gill deciding to come in at number 3. That is a very good move. Shubman Gill himself went, like Vikram Rathore yesterday had a press conference in Dominica, where he said that what we like about Gill is that he can get a move on, and if required, he can play time. You need both aspects of that player batting in at number 3. He didn't say anything. You have to read between the lines, Maya, what he wants at number 3. Both playing time and moving the game. He wants someone who can move the game, and and that's why Yashasvi and Shubman fit over there in that position as opener and number 3. Eventually, Shubman might also play number 4, but number 3 is his place. He has played in the West Indies with the A team in 2019 at number 3, 4 and 5. There were 3 test matches. He played at 3, 4 and 5 in 3 test matches. All 3 numbers. Rahul Dravid incidentally was the India.
Okay, he's back.
In fact, he had a double 100 in Taruba. So, this match, okay, fine, he was padded up for nearly 76 overs. So, it always happens. After 76 overs of partnership, one follows another. So, I believe Shubman Gill at number 3 has also helped Yashasvi because opening is his natural position. Yeah. So, he didn't have to shift, or he wasn't shifted because seniors are batting in their preferred slot. He was given the slot. He has been batting all along. So that mental mindset, everything is required. You have to marry everything to get that. So everything was in order for Yashasvi. And you have to give that credit to the team management, to Rahul Dravid, to Rohit Sharma, to Shubman Gill, to Vikram Rathore. Yeah. All these people, Paras Mamre,
because I remember this press conference that Rohit Sharma did, which is not really, can't be called a press conference because there are, I think, all of 2 reporters there. But the part that stood out for me was how Rohit casually mentioned this thing about, Shubman Gill went to Rahul and said, I want to bat at 3 because that's where I batted at 3 and 4. And I thought times have changed. I said this to Jamie. I said, when was the last time you had heard this, that, a young player like Shubman Gill would walk up to the coach and say, Coach, put me in at 3 because that's my most comfortable position, because more often than not, you coming in, you don't get to decide your position. The coach and the team management does. So that was nice to see. Of course, we don't know the details of what happened there. But let's move on then and talk about another star of the show, Ravichandran Ashwin. We've seen him do this before. We don't know why the heck was he not there in the World Test Championship final, guys. We've had a lot of conversations about it, about why someone like Ravichandran Ashwin, experienced, intelligent, effective bowler like him, was not given an opportunity in England at the World Test Championship final. And not just the World Test Championship final, he's just not got to play in England. And one of the things that stands out about the kind of decisions that team management takes is that in 2016, he was India's highest wicket taker in the West Indies. He scored 2 centuries, and then in 2019, he didn't find a place in the playing 11 in those 2 test matches. Ravindra Jadeja was preferred over him. And here he is showing what he's capable of. And I think by now it's very clear that home or away, he is one of your biggest match winners. He should be right up there in that team sheet before a lot of other players, Jamie. Isn't that so? And this has underlined that. Whether it's helpful conditions, which there were, I agree, in Dominica. But having said that, I think by now the team management should be sure of this fact that we're not going to drop Ravichandran Ashwin in test matches.
See, conditions, that is the word on which it seems from the outside Ashwin is picked or not picked. Now, like this West Indies match showed, and why the West Indies would roll out such conditions for India is frankly beyond me. Conditions, when the conditions are suiting Ashwin, there's a reason. And this was not, some great bowling. This was a demolition. This was a demolition job by a person who knows exactly what to do, not just because he's a student of the game, but he can dissect problems from a mile away, right? Ashwin did not have to do anything outstanding. He just used the conditions. He used his smarts. He used all the tactical strength he has. And he just out-bowled, out-thought, and he absolutely smashed them. Had he been given the ball earlier, from the start, he may have had 15, 16 wickets. That's how in control of the West Indies, a very poor, shoddy West Indies, it must be added, Ashwin was. Now, coming to places like England, where the team will say, the conditions don't suit him and all this stuff, right? There have been some instances, yes, when Ashwin perhaps should not have played. But I think Indian cricket owes it to this man for what he's achieved. It's going to take a hell of a lot for him to do it. But he might get closer to Kumle's test record than we think, if he gets played. But you go back to all the times. England, yes, we've talked about this, harped upon this, ke 6 लगातार match tak Ashwin ko nahi khilaya England mein. Of those 6, there are probably 2 matches where you could have said, okay, here he doesn't fit in. But there's enough people who say, no, absolutely not. He should have played those 6. But I just go back to what you brought up, 3-4 shows ago, that 2019 tour to the West Indies, why he was left out there, because that's a place where he's going to dominate, right? Yeah. Whatever it is, and his numbers, frankly, some years ago were pretty poor in overseas conditions. But like you expect from a champion bowler like Ashwin, he fixed that. Which is why the numbers, they're not going to be great numbers because he's an off spinner. They're not going to be great in countries like Australia, where many off spinners have not done well. They're not going to be great in England, where many off spinners have not done well, But they've gotten better. The average has come down. The strike rate has improved. So here's a man willing to give it everything he possibly can give it to improve his numbers. And just on that basis, like we've been saying, after the captain, irrespective of who the captain is, the first name on that sheet should be Ashwin. Now in 22, 23, 24, 25, however long he's around, the time has gone, long gone to bring
Yeah.
in conditions to play when you're talking about a certain Ravichandran Ashwin. Just my 2 cents on this matter.
Which takes me to the next question. Two questions. One is you were talking about his average, and I was looking at some numbers there, Jamie. 2019 onwards, you look at the top spinners around the world who played more than 10 innings. In Sena countries, his average is the best. So there is this narrative around him that, he's not as effective. Well, there you go. Numbers tell you a story. The other thing being, why didn't they make him the vice captain then, Kushan?
Well, they didn't make him the vice captain for the simple reason, Neha, that you do not know whether he will fit into your 11 in overseas conditions. Simple. Like you and me both know the answer. It's an open secret. But having said that, then you can be devil's advocate and said that you made Rahane the vice captain and you dropped him in South Africa in the 2018 series.
Yeah.
So if you're the vice captain, then how could you? So there are arguments on both sides. Having said that, about Ravichandran Ashwin, like a great performer, he should have played the WTC final. India read the conditions wrong, but having said that, Indian pace attack was doing phenomenally well, and Ravindra Jadeja in overseas conditions is a batting all-rounder and not a bowling all-rounder who is giving you those 10-12 overs of peeler. What happened with Ravichandran Ashwin? Well, this is my understanding. I am no one here to sit in judgment. I don't have the capability to judge a bowler of Ashwin's caliber. There were a few matches that always sticks with fans and analysts. There was one such match in Johannesburg in 2014, fifth day. India should have won that test match. There is 2016, Jamaica, Roston Chase batted the whole day. And then there is 2018, Southampton. Well, these are some of the overseas test matches. Southampton test match, probably during the Shastri Kohli era, that match was a 50-50 match. But Ashwin probably had an abdominal tear and he was carrying an injury. He was in pain. He couldn't pivot well. And this is not what I am saying. What I have read subsequently in the interviews given by Ashwin to people he trusts that who wouldn't misquote him. So he had injury issues. So he couldn't probably give his 100%. But that Southampton test match, well, it did some harm to his reputation as a bowler in Sena countries. That has been an issue with him, and also the fact that he started well during the historic Australia series 21-20 that series 2021 series. He was absolutely brilliant in Melbourne, I believe, on the first day when there was moisture if there is moisture on the first day, first or Ashwin is as dangerous as any fast bowler. So that was there, but then again he had the spasms and he couldn't play the Brisbane Test match. So it's a mix and match. You cannot say like if Rohit and Dravid hasn't played Ashwin in WTC final, Virat and Shastri did the same thing during the 4 Test matches in England. So it has been some of the performances against better batting attacks where possibly those snapshot examples have been taken. Whether it's a good or a bad thing, I'm not going to sit in judgment.
I get your point. I get your point, and I also feel like he's more evolved since then. So we've got to give it to him. He's somebody like he's constantly innovating. He's constantly trying to outdo the batter, and this is exactly what he said after his performance in Dominica. He said, I'm thinking constantly like a batter when I'm bowling. The first few overs, I'm settling into a nice rhythm. I'm looking for different angles, trying to see whether my round arm ball spins or the up and over spins or the flatter trajectory spins. I try and gauge the pitch. I try and gauge the right place to be bowling with, and then I'm looking for the batter. That's one phase, gentlemen. There's a next phase that he talks about where he is saying that's the next phase for me. Where is the head moving? Where is he looking to score those runs? Is he falling over? Is his front leg coming over? Those are the things I'm looking at. Today, when I was bowling at Craig Brathwaite, it was something I was working on in the first innings as well. I felt like when the round arm action was coming in, he was losing his head. Jamie, I don't think he stops thinking. I don't think Ravichandran Ashwin stops thinking on and off the field. He's constantly thinking about what he can do. And increasingly, I'm getting that feeling after watching all of these interviews that he's given in the last 2 years. And he said this, that he says it's very draining for a thinking cricketer to constantly keep thinking of how to get better. And of course, not have the surety of playing the next test match.
Yep, and he also mentioned in those 2 interviews he gave after the WTC final how perhaps this tag that he's been labeled with of being overthinking or too analytical may have been the reason. This is what he's feeling may have been the reason why he's not been given any leadership role. Possible, very, very true. But again, it just goes back to what we're discussing. He's evolved. Kushan gave 3 examples: 14, 16, and 18. And yeah, totally, we've heard enough. We've seen enough. We know enough to realize that 18 India made a mistake by playing him. They should have played Jadeja. And in regards to 14 he was only 2.5 years old in his Test cricket. So if we can put 14 aside and 18 aside and just have one Test match in the West Indies, that's if indeed there's any truth to this about that impression being painted, then it's very, very harsh. This is a man who's been playing now since 11. He's been playing Test cricket. He's ticked off enough boxes. And frankly, I'll just say what I was saying earlier. I don't think this whole talk of conditions needs to apply to him, especially if you're saying, Meha, that the numbers have improved so much that he's the best spinner in Sena countries.
Can I tell
Maybe
you
also just to
though in that same list, Ravindra Jadeja comes a close second. Just putting it out there.
Imagine. No, but I'm saying, just to add on what Kushan was saying, it's because Jadeja is this phenomenal batsman post 18, 19 who happens to bowl, right? I've always said that, when Jadeja is not around because he's injured and they don't rest him, he gets injured, the balance of that 11 gets thrown out of whack so significantly because of selection, right? And in some part, it's because they've not trusted Ashwin in enough overseas tests, especially in England and Australia. Yes, Jadeja is a world-class all-rounder, but you have to see Ashwin as the far superior bowler who's a decent batsman and Jadeja as the far superior batsman who's a decent bowler. And when you put these two together, 9 times out of 10, they're going to work wonders. So whether it's public perception, like Kushan touched upon, whether it's internal in-team perception, like we've all been talking about, whenever Ashwin has been snubbed, whatever it is, I just feel it's an injustice to someone of his talent.
Okay. Let's then talk about the Ashes. The Australian opener, Usman Khawaja, who was involved in the scuffle between the MCC members and him at Lord's during the second test, believes the crowd abuse has gone too far in the Ashes series. Khawaja said he was disappointed and that he's not a big fan of it. Khawaja also added that he would not like it if this was happening to England players in Australia as well. He said he wouldn't want to be at these games given the stuff. He wouldn't want his family, in fact, or his kids to be at these games given the stuff that was being said. Now, the Ashes series itself, 2-1 in favor of Australia, a lot to look forward to. But this Jamie, the incident that happened at Lord's and Usman Khawaja talking about how he doesn't feel safe to take his family to England. A lot of English players, and he says it in the press conference itself, that I know that English players say the same, that the same kind of treatment's meted out to them when they are in Australia. But is that a problem with the Ashes now, where, fans just get too intense? It's too competitive, whether it's in England or it's in Australia. Of course, this one has taken another form of its own, life of its own, the Johnny Bairstow incident. But is that something that the ICC, MCC should do something about?
They're going to have to, right? Because it's just gotten ugly. We've seen that. And I think Yes, like you just touched upon, Maya. This has been a dirtier, uglier brawl because of all. I mean, again, I just go back to this, right? This is something that we frankly have not seen before, you know. So when this is happening, someone has to get involved. Is the MCC going to do anything? Well, these jokers are all part of the MCC, the very governing body which writes the rules of cricket. So if these people are flouting those rules and the so-called cliched spirit of cricket, I don't think we can expect the MCC to do much. Will the ICC take action? Again, I've nothing that I've seen in their history suggests they have the spine to actually do something. They'll come out with some comments, they'll do something here and there. But if Usman Khwaja, one of the most likable people to come out of Australian cricket ever, is saying things, and let's not forget that he's also a member of the Australian Players Board. So he also has a certain voice in that. So see it not just as Usman Khwaja speaking, the Asian Australian, but also as Usman Khwaja, who's part of the Players Board body as well. It's just shocking, and it shouldn't have happened. I know players do get a certain amount of stick when they go to Australia, especially. So it might sound right to certain people if it's coming from Australian, but frankly, things have just gotten way out of hand this time, and let's hope some action is taken. But I'm not very hopeful of it happening.
Okay, let's put that quote up for everybody to see. What exactly has Usman Khwaja said? If we could put that quote up. In that he says, I mean, they're rough. If you talk about it to England guys, they say we're equally as rough when they go to Australia. I don't agree with it either way. I don't think it's the right thing to do. Personally, if I'm coming to the cricket and watching the cricket, I wouldn't want my kids to be around that. If I saw that, I would 100% make a complaint or just leave. I think some of the stuff can be pretty poor. Over at Edgbaston, they were calling Travis Head a dash, you know what. I can't believe you can actually say that in a public domain anywhere. MCC are all over it. I trust them to do the right thing. I know, watching a lot of sport and loving sport, that it happens around the world. You watch the NBA, it happens there, particularly when crowds can get real close to you, which they can in cricket. It is what it is. I don't agree with it. I've been doing it all my life and it doesn't bother me. And if it does, I will let them know. And those are valid concerns there, Kushan. I mean, for somebody who wants his kids to come and watch the game. And of course, like Jamie was saying, Lords went out of hand. I think the way MCC members reacted, the way the crowd there at Lords reacted, that was something that needed to be dealt with stringently, right? But having said that, at what point do you say, because you want the game to be competitive, that's what people have been talking about, right? It's when the game gets competitive, when you have this kind of a, what can you call it? This kind of back and forth between fans from the two countries. That's what people would want, right? We keep talking about popularity of Test cricket. Is that part of it?
Look, a bit of spice is always more engaging. It makes the contest more enticing. But having said that, what Usman Khwaja was telling, I believe Mohammad Siraj also felt the same way when Indian team played at Sydney. And during the COVID times, when there were very less people, even then some had to be evicted from the ground for making comments which were unnecessary, unsavory, and quite below the belt. So Australians also can't just say that everything is hunky-dory in Australia and things are only bad in England. Yes, the racism part in England is way more. We have, on your show, we have extensively discussed about it.
Yeah.
And this is an extension of that. What you are seeing over here is lots of extension of that holistic problem of racism. So it's not one incident in isolation. It's about a mindset. It's about a colonial mindset. It's about a superiority complex. It's about supremacy. It's about everything all taken together, all an amalgamation of everything taken together, which makes them believe that they're holding the high horse.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to the other talking point of the day. Now, this is Yuzvendra Chahal. The story is about him. He was unhappy when RCB did not retain him ahead of the 2022 IPL mega auction. And he has opened up about his frustration when RCB did not retain him ahead of the 2022 IPL mega auction after he played for them for 8 years. That's not all. RCB didn't even bid for him. He was bought by Rajasthan Royals for 6.5 crores, and the other bidders were Mumbai Indians, Delhi Capitals and Sunrisers Hyderabad. Chahal, in a YouTube interview to Ranveer Allahabadiya, he says that there were rumors about him saying he'd asked for too much money. But he clarified that he had not asked for any specific amount. He said that they knew my value and I let them decide my value, but he was deeply disappointed by this franchise that he had played for and actually had done well for. I think he was the highest wicket taker for the franchise and they refused to bid for him. What was going on? There's another story today. I'm sure you both have read it because it's, I think, on Cricinfo where they're talking about the future of Mike Hesson and Sanjay Bangar, and they're not sure whether those two will be given an extension next season. But how do you see this? I've spoken to so many players who've said that as much as they want to be bought by teams, they want to play for these teams, that open auction just seems like they are cattle waiting to be bought and sold in a mela, but this itself, this can be disappointing. This can also hit your self-confidence, Jamie, what he talks about.
Absolutely, and you see the year in which he was not, as he says, surprisingly retained, was also the year he also did not go to the T20 World Cup, and then the next T20 World Cup he went there. He didn't play a single game. So there's obviously a lot of evident bitterness in what Yuzvendra Chahal says. I don't know. Kushan is probably better placed to comment. We have not heard anything either from sources or in the public from RCB what the possible reason could be. But we've heard him. He spoke, of course, on that YouTube podcast. He spoke a lot more in depth than before, but he said enough things before to understand that this was a very, very bitter and shocked individual, because he remains RCB's highest wicket taker, and the majority of those wickets have come at the Chinnaswamy, which anyone knows is very, very hard place to bowl to, more so if you're a spinner. So who knows what it is. In regards to what you were saying earlier about about the report about certain changes, I think it's very, very obvious that changes have to come, because this team has gone 16 seasons without coming even close to getting their hands on the trophy. And more than that, it's just repeatedly, Mike Hesson's been in charge for four seasons, I think you mentioned. The selection blunders that team keeps making. They very rightfully moved on from Virat Kohli, the captain, which is a very good call in my book, but the selection blunders keep showing up. So clearly, whatever they're drinking and eating down there in Bangalore is not resulting in anything for the fans. And what passionate fans they have, right?
Yeah.
So let's hope that Bangar and Hesson and all these guys are shown the door, because they're clearly just not doing anything.
Okay, let's put those quotes up. Let's take the first quote where he's talking about how he's angry with Royal Challengers Bangalore management. He says, when I put my name up for the auction, they promised me that they will go all out for me. I said, okay, but then I was not picked. I was very angry for 2 to 3 days. When I played my first match for RR against RCB, I think, and he did well in that match. I did not speak to anyone from RCB, not even the coaches. Definitely, I felt very bad. My main journey started in 2014. I also felt very weird because I played for the franchise for 8 years. Let's also take the second quote and then I'll go to Kushan, because I'm sure he has more interesting things on this. I would also say that I got the India cap because of my performances for RCB, because they gave me a chance to perform. From the very first match, Virat Bhai showed trust in me. I heard things like, Yuzi ne bahut paise mang liye honge. Yuzi must have asked for a lot of money. That's why I clarified in an interview, which is an interview he'd given to R. Ashwin earlier for his YouTube channel. He says, I had not asked for any specific amount. I know what I deserve. The worst thing which I felt very bad about was that I did not receive any phone call. No one even spoke to me. I think I played around 114 games for them. I couldn't understand what happened suddenly. This is bizarre. And what is more bizarre, Kushan, is a very clear planning in not wanting to bid for him, because they didn't even try. Like I said, I think there were 3 other franchises that tried to bid for him, but RCB didn't even.
Well, I never understood how you cannot have Yuzvendra Chahal in your lineup if you've had him, and how you cannot retain him. And also, it baffles me when I see him out of Indian team. I believe a leg spinner, he would get hit on the days, but he should be there in your team, in your first 11. No compromise on that front. Having said that, now let me come to a point about IPL retentions. Like IPL retentions, you have 95 crore is your purse if it doesn't increase next year to 100 or 105. And you had 4 retentions like 16 crores, 12 crores, 10 crores, and 8 crores or 6 crores. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm very bad with numbers. These are now a lot of people. A lot of people make a mistake that the retention money is the money given to the player. Like if player number 1 is 16 crore, that means that player is getting 16 crore for being retained. No. 16 crore is the amount that you have fixed between the franchisee and the IPL governing council, that this amount of money will be deducted from your purse before you go to the auction. It could be that the player is getting 16 crores, but it could be that the player, the contract between the bipartite agreement between the franchisee and the player could be 10 crores, 12 crores, it could be 18 crores also. And there could be other perks, advertisements, the profit sharing. That is a very different issue. The amount that is deducted is not necessarily the amount that is his salary. That is the deduction from the purse. So there comes a question like, what was the number where Yuzvendra Chahal, if they would have retained, they would have retained? Second question is that RCB's retention, they wouldn't have taken the decision without speaking to Virat Kohli.
Absolutely.
No, taken without, let's have some common sense. Let's not, 3 of us are over here with nearly 2 decades of experience in this profession. Let's not insult any of our intelligence. Without Virat Kohli's yes, no, or suggestions, they do not do stuff. So, if Yuzvendra Chahal was not retained, then possibly it wouldn't have happened. And Virat Kohli was the captain, is India captain for a long time. So it wouldn't have happened. Number 1. Number 2, where they're looking at a different team combination, where they're looking to do something different, then certainly it hasn't worked in the 4 years. So it was a bad decision, it was a bad call. RCB has been making those bad calls. They even made those bad calls in Women's Premier League where their Indian lineup was pathetic. And it showed in WPL. And Mike Hassan was also in charge of WPL. He's the director of cricket.
There's a reason why he probably won't be retained.
Now the
Kushan,
story that we're...
I would love to hear this story, but I've been told 5 times that we're completely out of time. They've got to change the camera setup for another day, for tomorrow. We're going to have this story. We're going to have you complete this story. But thank you so much for joining us here. That's it from us. Completely out of time. News 9 Live is what you need to subscribe to for all the latest from the world of sports. Goodbye.
Gautam Adani, one of the richest men in the world, or a business honcho, accused of manipulating the market.
अदानी जी 609 नंबर से दूसरे नंबर तक कैसे पहुंचे? सिर्फ एक सवाल पूछा, नरेंद्र मोदी जी, आपका अदानी जी से रिश्ता क्या है?
He has given the space, the railways, the airport, which he has no experience also. So the country's interest has been compromised.
Government has been very clearly supporting few industrial groups, including Adani's industrial group.
Target Adani, streaming now.